Welcome, welcome to another episode of Live Wellness Wednesday with Robin Engelson. Today I have a special guest in store for you, and you are going to be blown away by Tracy Bingaman's interest and dedication to what she does as a physician assistant. So what I'm going to do here is read her bio so you can hear exactly who she is. The Money PA, Tracy Bingaman, helps physician associates land the biggest raises of their careers. From the depths of healthcare burnout, Tracy has healed and grown to become a unicorn PA with a job that she loves and abundant time, money, and energy. She slashed work hours from 60 to 24 per week and tripled her hourly income while practicing clinically as a PA. On the PA is in podcast. Tracy recently celebrated 65,000 downloads as she works to redefine success as a physician associate. A thought leader on burnout, boundaries, work optional financial freedom, and how to negotiate as a PA, Tracy is helping PAs to earn more money, work less hours, and ultimately become unicorns to PA. Wow. I'm so excited to just have this idea and put it into fruition and be able to help specifically the niche that you want to help is mind-blowing. And what you've done so far and what you're continuing to do is incredible. So Tracy, if you could please just take it away and share a little bit more about who you are and what you do, we'd love to hear.
Yeah, so my name is Tracy Bingaman. I am a working mom. I have not one, not two, but 5 kiddos at home. So a whole lot of humans running around here. But I am a PA who burned out big time and realized that what you don't learn in school is how to create a career that is sustainable, that works for you, that is healthy, that you can be mentally and physically well, and that you can do for a whole lot of years. Because the pace that we take up when we come out of school is simply not sustainable for the length of a career, which my body and mind told me when I burned out really big as a part of working in healthcare, which I'm sure we'll get into talking to a little bit later. But now I'm on this mission to help other PAs, other working moms, other healthcare providers to realize that there's not one true way to be successful and to take care of patients, and that there is a way to find what works for you and for it to be sustainable long-term.
That's incredible. And I know it's so true. When you come out of school, it's just this fast pace to get ahead as fast as you can. And, really not take the time to think about your health and your well-being. It's just move. How fast can I go? And that does turn into burnout very quickly. So if you could just talk a little bit for us, or to us, Tracy, about the burnout that happens in working in healthcare.
Yeah. So healthcare is one of these fields that we often feel called to do. And that calling is amazing. And it's so wonderful to be doing something that you feel called to. But also, it's a field that, because if you feel it's your calling and your vocation, that we're inherently bad at building boundaries. We feel like we have to do it for the patients, we have to do it for our colleagues, and that because we are called to do it, that we don't have the benefit of having boundaries, which is just incorrect. You can do something that you love, you can have a calling, a vocation, a passion, and still log off and not chart from home and not have it be like something that takes over your entire life. We have to, as medical professionals, change this narrative that because we're doing something we feel called to do, that it gets to write the rules. We get to write the rules about when we work, and that won't change unless or until we start saying no to extra shifts and taking work home and charting at home. Unless we say no, we're going to continue to keep doing it.
Absolutely. And, I think it's so important. I've learned that no is a superpower. And when you're able to say no, you're actually prioritizing things that serve you. And you're not doing things that don't serve you. So you're not, you're working in your path, right? You're not taking everything on your shoulders, and which is building the weight and is weighing you down, right? And so if you could just talk a little bit more about, what you're called to do, but not taking over your life, and how that impacts your profession as well as your health.
Yeah. So My personal experience with burnout was one where I just said yes to more and more. And I took on a higher stress job in a subspecialty, and I loved it until it started to make me really sick. So I had a period of time where I had pneumonia and I was just super run down and I couldn't seem to get sleep. And rest was really just not part of my vocabulary. I was going all the time at work. I would come home and try to show up well for my kids, even though I was pretty empty from what I had poured out on the field at work. And all of those things cumulatively built up until eventually my body was just like, this is not sustainable. I was having heart rates in the mid 100s to low 200s at rest with no actual like physiologic reason, just that I was so stressed and that my body was attacking my own thyroid to the point where it was just saying, go, go. And I didn't have a mode of being able to rest. And so for me, that burnout came like to a crashing halt where things were actually on fire. My hope is that by sharing my story and by having like resources like the ones that you are sharing, is that people realize before everything is burning down around them that what they're doing is not healthy, it's not sustainable. And how can we make small shifts early on to prevent getting to that point where we are really truly all the way burned out and ready to walk away completely?
Absolutely. And I think it's so hard when you're in that situation
Mm,
and you're successful and it's your calling. You don't really necessarily know how to slow down, to speed up.
mm,
And you
yeah.
don't realize what's happening with your body until it's gotten to the point where it may be too late for your health, but you're still wanting to do it. So it's kind of like that, you're cross in the middle where what do I do? Do I keep going in my health
Mm,
deplenish and go down? Or do I take a step back from my career that I worked so hard for and focus on my health? So if you could just take a little bit of time here and talk about how do we recognize the body awareness or have that body awareness
mm.
when we're going so hard at work and kind of before the burnout happens, so we can take care of
Yeah. So, one thing I want to say before I answer that question about body awareness
our
and what I wish I had done as I was burning
health.
out when it comes to being
Yeah.
aware of your body, is that we each have the opportunity to define what success means for
Mhm.
us. So, it is okay for that definition of success to change over time. So, the successful life with the high acuity specialty and a job where you're just absolutely killing it might not be the version of success that you are destined for in this season of life. And that's okay. That there are seasons of life where we lean into what our kids need and what we need and what our marriage needs. And that work is secondary and that is absolutely okay. And that you get to redefine what success means for you as you go throughout life. Like that is the beauty of the human existence, is that we are constantly growing and changing. And if you have reached quote unquote success the way that you thought it looked and it feels like crap, that you can redefine your destination and go somewhere else. Like that is kind of stressful because it's on you, but also very liberating if what you thought you wanted feels not sustainable and not great for you, that you get to change that definition of success. So, little encouragement there if you feel like I sort of arrived but don't feel like things are good,
Mhm.
you can change that. When it comes to body awareness, I definitely was used to ignoring the signals that my body was sharing with me because in school and on rotations and as an early new grad, the whole healthcare system was telling me you have to ignore what your body is telling you so that you can focus on what other people's bodies are telling them, right? So you are focused on saving everyone else, you're focused on everyone else's symptoms and signs and vitals, but no one is like stopping to take their own pulse and say like, "Hey, how am I doing? How am I feeling? How am I emotionally processing this? How am I dealing with stress in my body? Do I have appropriate coping mechanisms. Because at the
Mhm.
end of the day, burnout is like our stress level is up here and our ability to cope with that stress is down here. And when there's a big disconnect with how much stress we're experiencing and our appropriate skills, burnout happens in that gap. So if we're not identifying, hey, I'm sort of early stressed out, I'm a little bit worried about this, I'm a little bit anxious, if we don't catch those early warning signs, it is not going to fix itself. If I could go back and tell myself, like my new graduate PA self, anything, it would be the number one priority you should have is to learn to listen to your body and understand how to make shifts so that you can feel better over time. Because I think if I had done that, I maybe wouldn't have burned out at all.
Isn't that so interesting? And I feel like as we evolve over time and we become more knowledgeable, um, we think, well, I think this way now, and
Mm,
I would tell my younger self this because my younger self didn't know this or didn't
mm,
have the resources to know it or to understand it. And, I think it's two things that I want to comment on what you just said. First off, about success.
mm,
So, yes, success changes over time because your priorities change over time. When you're younger, just out of school and don't have any kids or a family yet, your priority, you have a lot more time to
mhm.
dedicate to yourself and your career. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to be burnt out.
Yeah.
And what we're talking about with that gap. So it's very important to have that awareness that even though you're go, 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 like what is success to you?
Mm,
Um, because work is secondary. Because if you don't have your health, you can't work, right?
mm,
So, and then the other thing you mentioned about the training in your education in your field is to help others first. So they're
mm,
not teaching you about body awareness, self-awareness, putting yourself first, always about the people you're caring for. And I get that as a caregiver, but at the same point, we need to care about ourselves and make ourselves a priority so we can then put the patients first.
yeah.
Because if we're not healthy, we can't do that, right? And just being aware of the different things that are happening in our body, and it's okay to take a break, it's okay to rest. I call it one day a week. I rest, rejuvenate, and recover.
Mm,
And it's so important to be able to do that for our bodies and for our minds, because when you're training in your specific training, Tracy, when they're teaching you to take care of the other person first, but yet now you would have told yourself to take care of yourself first, that's a huge mindset shift,
yeah. Yeah.
right?
And it also places value on you as an individual, right? So there's this thing about healthcare where everything is a system, right? You're one of many providers taking care of many patients as a part of this system. When you start to say, my health matters, and you can even say, my health matters for my future patients, right? Because if I'm healthy and I can be of clear mind and make strong medical decisions and do it from a place of calm and strength and knowledge, that serves all of my future patients. I think we need to get rid of this idea that like taking care of yourself is somehow instead of being able to take care of other people. It's in addition to, and I would say it's a necessary precursor to be able to have a long, wonderful career where you have the opportunity to take care of all of these patients starts with first being able to walk the walk and take care of yourself so that you can show up well to take care of all of those other people.
Absolutely. I love what you just said about taking care of yourself so you can take care of your future patients, because health is wealth.
Mm,
And if you don't have your health, you're not going to be able to take care of the future patients that are coming to
yeah.
you, right? So important. And that leads me to talking about autoimmune disease, right? Because there's a lot of, awarenesses and body awareness and things that happen to us that we are just not educated perhaps in that moment, like our younger self, of different things that could be happening to our body. And,
Mm,
with autoimmune, you can't necessarily prevent it because it is in your DNA. However, there are certain things you can do to help yourself in that moment, and throughout your lifestyle. So I know I have Hashimoto's, thyroid autoimmune disease, and hypothyroidism, which definitely took a toll on me for years. And I had a very high paced job, very successful, and had huge burnout. but it wasn't because I was burnt out at what I was doing. I was burnt out because I couldn't keep up with the pace because my body was failing. And that's a very different burnout, still being burnout, right? But it's a very different way that your mind has to adjust and deal with and find the solution so you can still thrive with your autoimmunity. So I know, Tracy, you also have an autoimmune disease and you're also a mom like me. So if you could share a little bit about your autoimmune disease and the burnout that happened or happens within that, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so I have autoimmune thyroid condition at the other end. So I have Graves' disease, where my immune system tells my thyroid to do more, to make more, even when my metabolism is not really calling for that. So during this season where I was, I think, both physically burned out and also career-wise burning out, I was super tachycardic, which for the non-medical listeners means my heart rate was really high without a reason. So when you exercise, your heart rate should go up. When you're sitting and eating a sandwich, it should not. And mine was going up without physiologic stimuli, right? So I was sitting there, charting on a patient. I was sitting there eating lunch and my heart was pounding and racing like I was running, like I was sprinting flat out, but I wasn't. And so it led for me to always be sort of like looking for the tiger, right? So I was feeling like I was like, needed to be in fight or flight, but I was in a safe space. My body didn't sort of know that I was in that safe space. And I had several visits to the ER where during a time period where I had pneumonia, was sort of recovering from pneumonia, I was just like, something isn't right. My heart rate is higher than I would expect. I just can't stay hydrated enough. And I would go to the ER and they would give me fluids and they would say, it got better. Go on home and keep recovering from your pneumonia. And I finally had to say, hey, what are my thyroid levels? Like this isn't sort of normal pneumonia. This isn't, what you would expect as a course in someone who's otherwise young and healthy recovering from this. And I had to ask for the lab tests that I wanted ordered. And I sort of thought like, yay, I figured it out. But turns out that figuring it out was just the beginning because then I had ongoing symptoms despite my labs being normal. And so my endocrinologist said, your labs are normal. Everything's great. And my cardiologist said, this is sinus tachycardia. Everything's great. And I had to keep pushing and saying, no, this doesn't feel great. I don't feel well. I don't think that the way that I feel is sustainable for the life that I want to live. And eventually I saw an integrative health practitioner who sort of looked at all of the things. So an endocrinologist looks at the endocrine system, a cardiologist looks at the heart, an integrative health provider looks at everything and the way that it all integrates together. I am not an integrative health provider, but I have a great one who is really the only one who sort of checked labs and really did an in-depth history, but also would ask me, the labs are getting better. How are you feeling? How are you doing? How does this showing up in the way that you're sleeping and the way that you're exercising and the way that you are emotionally and the way that you are, able to do the things that you need to do as a part of your life. And I love the healthcare system. It has been wonderful to me. However, as a patient, it's not designed for ease of use and it's not designed for that integrative aspect. We have sectioned things off, and that's really not how bodies work.
Absolutely. I find like it's silos is what I call it, right? Because when I got diagnosed, it's like I actually went in for blood work for something else and came out with antibodies off the chart, which is the high indicator of Hashimoto's. And then I spent the next 2 years going to doctor after doctor, traditional endocrinologists, popping me pills, giving me medicine, making me worse and worse, sicker and sicker. And I didn't feel like I felt sick before I got diagnosed. But then, then they're altering all the stuff and my blood work's normal. And, the famous line is, well, everything looks fine on paper, but I don't feel fine, right?
Yep.
There's something wrong with me. And I felt fine before he started giving me all this medication. So it's really important to be self-aware, like what you were saying, going to the different doctors to find out what you need. And I ended up going to a holistic doctor, integrative medicine doctor as well, because, at some point you just get sick and tired of being sick and tired and the doctor's not being able to help you. And then finding a simple solution through supplementation and nutrition and mindset, because my body wasn't producing certain things. That medication is not going to help. Medication helps the thyroid, but when you're deficient in something that your body's not producing, you need a supplementation. And so it's finding that holistic help and approach that'll help you. And, and never taking no for an answer. Like when the doctor doesn't know what's wrong with you, don't stop.
Yeah.
It's not you. It's not you, right? You're just another number in their day. You are so much more important than a number that they're checking off that they saw the patient today, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think it's so spot on what you were saying, Tracy, like just go to all the doctors and find out how you can get help and ask the questions and know that, well, maybe I should get this, maybe I should get, who knows, it may help you, right? It's not going to hurt you to get a lab test, right?
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen. You could find the solution, and I really find that with the nutrition is such a key component. And maybe Tracy, you could touch on this as well. But when I switched my nutrition, before I got all the medication and supplements right, I started to feel a lot better. Like I'm allergic to dairy, so I've never had dairy, but I stopped gluten. I started eating smaller portions every 3 hours instead of 3 large meals. And I started to get my blood sugar regulated throughout the day. Lights. And I started energizing and fueling my body with the proper nutrition. So I started to feel better. So Tracy, did you have a similar situation as well?
Yeah. So I had asked my integrative health doc probably about 6 months ago, like, hey, what can I be doing? We were at this phase where it was like, things are pretty good, right? Numbers are pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good, but really, oh my goodness, sorry. That I wanted to optimize, right? So it was like we were out of crisis mode. We had figured out what was going on, but we didn't want it to just be like, okay, forever. Like, oh no, we wanted it to be good, great. I wanted to feel really well. And so I said like, hey, what can I do to optimize? And he said, you could give up alcohol and you could give up gluten. And I was like, okay,
Yeah,
I'll think about it, right?
Yeah, I gave up alcohol too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 6 months ago, I gave up alcohol. And that was something that for me was probably the easiest thing. Easier than giving up gluten, easier than giving up processed sugar. I just one day said, I don't drink anymore and stopped drinking. I know that's not true for everyone. For me, giving up processed things and gluten has been a little more of a journey. And I just actually last week, like officially was like, I'm not having any more gluten. I'm going to do 6 months of gluten-free and see how I feel. And I think that is a lot of this. Like, how do you feel? Try it and see how you feel. Because you don't know, and no one else's experience is exactly the same as yours. No one else's physiology is exactly the same as yours. So a friend that gave up dairy, but if dairy doesn't bother you, like that might not help you, but you won't know until you try. And part of this journey is just saying like, I'm not willing to take no for an answer, but I'm also willing to be a beginner and learn about things and try different things to see how they make me feel. And all of that ties back into how do I feel? And am I paying attention to how I feel? Because if you're not tuned into that, you don't even know if it's making you better or not.
Absolutely. And being so tuned in with yourself and knowing how you feel. And, trying something for a week is not going to serve you. You're not going to really know how you feel. But 6 months, you're going to know how you feel at the end of the 6 months. And you can evaluate it and see, is that serving you? Or can you go back and have gluten because it really wasn't affecting you, right? I know I gave up alcohol as well, too. And it wasn't a big deal for me either. But, in certain, now everybody knows. But in certain situations, it can be, it's just different, right? But here's the thing I always share is that no one cares about your health as much as you do. No one cares. You got to be the most important person in your life because you need you before you can serve anybody else. And if it means not drinking, if it means not having gluten, if it means not having processed food, if it means, not doing whatever it is to keep you healthy and feeling good, and energized and a present parent and a present coworker or employee or whoever you are in the day, then try it, do it. What do you got to lose? I always say, you can choose to exist or you can choose to live. It's always your choice, but you got to be willing to make that choice.
Mm.
And so I really appreciate what you're saying, Tracy, because it is so important to try different things, go to the right people and practitioners, because everyone is different. Even though you have Graves, I have Hashimoto's, we get another person has Graves or Hashimoto's, it's a completely different makeup. The disease is the same, but it's very different as far as the protocol and what serves your body.
Yeah.
So if we could, let's just transition a little bit now into, I love what you say here, recognizing that we are human beings, not human resources. So I'm super curious for you to elaborate on that and really share what that means to you so we can all hear about that.
Yeah. So when you get hired, right, human resources meets with you and talks to you about all of the things that you need to know about joining this team or being a part of this employee, employer relationship. And I was talking to a friend the other day and I was just like, we're not, renewable, right? As people, it's not okay for companies to like use us up, spit us out, and just find another person. That happens in practice all of the time. But I think it's just so important to realize that we are, as individuals, human beings, we are not valued by what we do for who we work for. And also that we may be to them a reusable entity that we get used up and, they move on to someone else. But we are, in and of ourselves, this human being. And that will exist before and after your relationship with that employer, outside of who you are. I think as a society, we've gotten very tied up into this commingling of who we are as people and what we do and how we serve the world, and that you are so much more than your occupation or even the people that you live in the world in relation to. So if you're a parent, if you're a mom, if you're a dad, that those kids like matter. And that might be the way that you introduce yourself, right? I say like, I'm Tracy, I'm a PA, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, that's actually not who I am. That's what I do and who I live in the world in relation to. Who I am is a multi-passionate person who likes singing and loves to be out in the sun and would ski every day of the year if that was logistically and financially possible for me. But that's really who I am, right? Those other things are just what I do and who I live in relation to, and that we are on our own a human being who is worthy and able to show up well in the world. And it's not because of what we produce, right? It's because of who we are.
Absolutely. And whatever we're doing or who we're helping in that moment, that doesn't define us. We are who we are because of what we choose to do, right? Like I love when you say you would ski all day, every day, and you love the sunshine. I'm a dancer. I would dance all day, every day, and be outside in the sunshine at the beach. I made a decision to move someplace where that is possible more days out of the year than it had been in the past. And it makes me super happy. And now people realize that not that any of that defines me, but that's who I am. I'm happy, I'm go-lucky, I'm energized, I'm a mom, I'm in the sunshine, I dance, walk my dog, all of those things. And it's so important, Tracy, I completely agree with you that we are not an employee. We are not someone, we are ourselves first and foremost. And back to what we started with, when you take care of yourself first and put yourself as a priority with your health, then the success is right there in front of you, right? Yeah. So I just want to thank you so much, Tracy. This was eye-opening, uplifting, empowering. As a mom myself with an autoimmune disease, to be able to relate to another mom with an autoimmune disease who is successful and defines her own success within the physician associate industry is just powerful, right? It's super powerful. So I'm so excited that you were able to be on Live Wellness Wednesday with us here. And if you could just share how people want more information about what you do, who you are, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so if you are hanging out on LinkedIn, you can search Tracy Bingaman on LinkedIn. I have a podcast called The PA is In. I talk
Mhm.
a lot about healthcare specific topics like burnout and boundaries and all of the things that we need to have in place to have really our own definition of success inside of that world. If you are listening to this and you heard me describing when I was burned out and you thought, that may be me, I may be burned out, you can head to tracybingaman.com/burnout-quiz. There is a free quiz, which is essentially a risk assessment of how likely you are to be burned out based on some questions about how you're feeling about taking care of patients and about taking care of yourself, which just gives you a good gauge of like, hey, am I doing okay? Do I have a low risk of burnout, moderate, or like are things burning down around me so that you can identify where you are on that spectrum?
Fantastic. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put Tracy's links below this live here, so you can just click on them and head right over. And I'll also put my link down below as well for a 15-minute clarity call. If you have autoimmunity, if you're a mom, if you're working, and you just really want to get clarity and have more energy and figure out what's going on and how you can find your success, go ahead and click on that link and schedule your 15-minute clarity call so we can all be successful together and define what that means for us. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You're welcome.